shooting video. At around 3, we got word that we were going inside after all. Then there was another delay. Hurry up and wait. Hurry up and wait. At past, we got the go. We were told it was final. A few minutes past 3:30, Ned Mahoney and I were up and racing toward a side entrance into the building. So were a dozen other guys from HRT. The good thing about protective gear is that it might stop a fatal or damaging bullet. The bad thing is that it slows you down, makes it harder to run as fast as you need to or want to, and forces your breath to come in gulps and gasps. Snipers were taking out windows, trying to keep resistance from inside as low as possible. Mahoney liked to call this drill 5 minutes of panic and thrills, but I always dreaded it. To me, it was more like 5 minutes closer to heaven or hell. I didn't need to be here, but Ned and I had done a couple of assaults together, and I couldn't stay away. A booming, ear-splitting explosion took out the back door. Suddenly, there were swirling clouds of black smoke and debris everywhere. Then we were both running through it. I was hoping not to catch a bullet to the head or some other exposed body part in the next couple of minutes. I was hoping nobody had to die tonight. Ned and I took fire right away, and we couldn't even tell who the hell was shooting at us. Drug dealers or the SWAT guys. Maybe both. The sound of machine guns and then grenades was deafening in the hallways, and as we inched up a set of winding stairs. There was a whole lot of firepower inside the building now, maybe too much for it to hold together. The noise level made it hard to think straight or keep any focus. "Hey, assholes!" I heard somebody shout from above us. A volley of gunshots followed, flashes of blinding light in the darkness. Then Ned grunted and went down hard on the stairway. I couldn't tell where he was hit at first. Then I saw a wound near his collarbone. I didn't know if he'd been shot or struck with flying debris. There was a lot of blood spilling from the wound, though. I stayed right there with him, called for help on the radio. I heard more blasts, shouts, male and female screams coming from above us. Chaos. Ned's hands were shaking, and I hadn't seen him show fear of anything before. The firefight raging in the building only added to the terror and confusion. Ned's face had lost its color. He didn't look good. "They're coming for you," I told him. "Stay with me, Ned. You hear me?" "Stupid," he finally said, groaning. "Walked right into it." "You feeling it yet?" "Could be worse. Could be better, too." "By the way," he said, "you're hit, too." Chapter 29. "I'll live," I told Ned as I huddled over him on the stairwell. "Yeah, me too. Probably, anyway." A couple of minutes later, the paramedics were with us in the cramped space. By the time they got Ned out of there, the gunfight seemed to be over. Just like he always said, 5 minutes of panic and thrills. Reports started to come in. Captain Tim Moran gave the latest to me himself. The assault on the heroin factory seemed to have had mixed results. Most of us felt we shouldn't have gone in so soon, but it wasn't our decision. 2 Metro officers and 2 from HRT were wounded on our side. Ned was headed into surgery. There were 6 casualties among those inside the building, including 2 men from SWAT. A 17-year-old mother of 2 was one of the dead. For some reason, she'd stayed inside when the lab workers came out. The girl's husband had died, too. He was 16. I finally got home at a little past 6 in the morning. I was dragging, wasted, bone-tired, and something about coming in so late, or early, seemed surreal. It only got worse. Nana was up waiting in the kitchen. Chapter 30. She was sitting over a cup of tea and toast, looking infirm, but I knew better. The hot beverage was steaming, and so was she. She hadn't gotten the kids up yet. Her small TV was tuned to the local news reports on last night's police action at Kentucky and 15th. It felt unreal to see the footage right here in our kitchen. Nana's eyes fixed on the scrape on the side of my forehead, the bandage there. "It's a scratch," I said. "Not a big deal. It's all good. I'm fine." "Don't give me that ridiculous nonsense answer, Alex," Don't you dare condescend to me like I'm somebody's fool. I'm looking at the line of trajectory taken by a bullet that came an inch from splattering your brains and leaving your 3 poor children orphans. No mother, no father. Am I wrong about that? No, of course not. I am so sick of this, though, Alex. I have been living with this sort of terrible dread every single day for over 10 years. This time I've had it. Up to here. I've truly had enough. I'm done with it. I'm through. I quit. Yes, you heard me correctly. I quit you and the children. I quit. I put up both my hands in defense. Nana, I was out with the kids when I got an emergency call. I had no idea the call was coming. How could I? There was nothing I could do to stop what happened. You accepted the call, Alex. Then you accepted the assignment. You always do. You call it dedication, duty. I call it total insanity, madness. I didn't have an option. You do have an option, Alex. That's my whole point. You could have said no, that you were out with your kids. What do you think they would do, Alex? Fire you for having a life? For being a father? And if by some accident of good fortune they did fire you, then so be it. I don't know what they could do, Nana. Eventually, I suppose they would fire me. And is that such a bad thing? Is it? Oh, forget it, she said, and banged her mug down hard against the tabletop. I'm leaving, she said. Oh, for God's sake, this is ridiculous, Nana. I'm totally exhausted. I was shot. Almost shot. We'll talk about it later. I need to sleep right now. Suddenly Nana stood up and she moved in my direction. Her face was wild with outrage, her eyes tiny black beads. I hadn't seen her like this in years, maybe not since I was growing up and a little on the wild side myself. Ridiculous! You call this ridiculous? How dare you say that to me? Nana struck me in the chest with the heels of both her hands. The blows didn't hurt, but their intent did. The truth of her words did. I'm sorry, I said. I'm just tired. Get yourself a housekeeper, a nanny, whatever you can get for yourself. You're exhausted? I'm exhausted. I'm fed up and exhausted and sick to death of worrying about you. Nana, I'm sorry. What else do you want me to say? Nothing, Alex. Don't say anything. I'm tired of listening to you anyway. She stomped off to her room without another word. Well, at least that was over, I thought, as I sat down at the kitchen table, tired and depressed as hell now. But it wasn't over. Minutes later, Nana reappeared in the kitchen, and she was lugging an ancient leather suitcase and a smaller traveling bag on wheels. She walked past me through the dining room and then right out the front door without another peep. "Nana!" I called, struggling up from my seat, then starting to jog after her. "Stop! Please, stop and talk to me. Let's talk." "I'm through talking." I got to the door and saw a dented and gashed pale blue DC cab throwing off exhaust fumes and plumes of smoke out front on the street. One of her many cousins, Abraham, drove for DC cabs. I could see the back of his retro afro from the porch. Nana climbed into the ugly blue taxi, and it immediately sputtered away from the house. Then I heard a small voice. "Where's Nana going?" I turned and lifted Allie, who had snuck around behind me on the porch. "I don't know, little man. I think she just quit on us." He looked aghast. "Nana quit our family?" Chapter 31.
Michael Sullivan woke with an awful shudder and a start, and knew immediately he wouldn't be able to get back to sleep. He'd been dreaming about his father again, the scary bastard, the boogeyman of all his nightmares. When he was a little kid, the old man had brought him to work at his butcher shop 2 or 3 times a week in the summer. This went on from the time he was 6 until he was 11, when it ended. The shop took up the ground floor of a 2-story red brick building on Quentin Road and East 36th Street. Kevin Sullivan, butcher, was known for having the best meats in all of the Flatland section of Brooklyn, but also for his skill in catering not just to the Irish, but to Italian and German tastes. The sawdust on the floor was always thick and swept clean every day. The glass in the windows of the cases sparkled, and Kevin Sullivan had a trademark. After he presented a customer's meat for inspection, he smiled and then took a polite bow. His little bow got them every time. Michael, his mother, and his 3 brothers knew another side of his father, though. Kevin Sullivan had massive arms and the most powerful hands imaginable, especially in the eyes of a young boy. One time he caught a rat in the kitchen and crushed the vermin in his bare hands. He told his sons he could do the same thing to them, crush their bones to sawdust, and their mothers seldom went a week without a purplish bruise appearing somewhere on her frail, thin body. But that wasn't the worst of it, and it wasn't what had woken Sullivan that night, and so many other times during his life. The real horror story had begun when he was 6, and they were cleaning up after closing one evening. His father called him into the shop's small office, which held a desk, a file cabinet, and a cot. Kevin Sullivan was sitting on the cot, and he told Michael to sit next to him. "Right here, boy, by my side." "I'm sorry, Dad," Michael said immediately, knowing this had to be about some dumb mistake he'd made during his chores. "I'll make up for it. I'll do it right." "Just sit," said his father. "You have plenty to be sorry for, but that's not it. Now you listen. You listen to me good." His father put his hand on the boy's knee. "You know how badly I can hurt you, Michael," he said. "You know that, right?" "Yes, sir, I know." "And I will," his father continued, "if you tell a single living soul." Tell them what? Michael wanted to ask, but he knew better than to say a word to interrupt his father once he had begun to speak. "Not a solitary soul." His father squeezed his son's leg until tears formed in Michael's eyes. And then his father leaned forward and kissed the boy on the mouth, and did other things that no father should ever do to his son.
Chapter 32.
His father had been dead for a long time now, but the creepy bastard was never far enough away from Sullivan's thoughts, and in fact he had devised unusual ways to escape from his childhood demons. Around 4 the next afternoon, he went shopping at Tyson's Galleria in McLean, Virginia. He was looking for something very special, just the right girl. He wanted to play a game called Red Light, Green Light. During the next half hour at the Galleria, he approached a few possible game players outside Saks Fifth Avenue, then Neiman Marcus, then Lily Rubin. His pitch was straightforward and didn't vary. Big smile, then, "Hi, my name's Jeff Carter. Could I ask you a couple of questions? You mind? I'll be quick, I promise." The 5th or 6th woman he approached had a very pretty, innocent face. A Madonna's face? And she listened to what he had to say. 4 of the women he'd hit on before her were pleasant enough. 1 was even flirty, but they'd all walked away. He had no problem with that. He liked bright people, and the women were just being cautious about the pickup game. What was the old saying? "Don't pick that up. You have no way of knowing where it's been." "Well, not exactly questions," he went on with his sales pitch to the Madonna of the Galleria. "Let me put it another way. If I say anything that bothers you, I'll stop and walk away. That sound fair enough? Like red light, green light." "That's a little weird," said the dark-haired girl. She had a truly gorgeous face and a nice body from what he could tell. Her voice was somewhat monotone. But hey, nobody's perfect, other than maybe himself. "But it's harmless," he went on. "I like your boots, by the way." "Thanks. It doesn't bother me to hear that you like 'em. I like 'em, too." "You have a nice smile, too. You know that you do, right?" "Sure you do." "Careful now. Don't lay it on too thick." They both laughed. Hitting it off okay, Sullivan was thinking to himself. The game was on, anyway. He just had to avoid getting a red light. "Okay if I go on?" he asked. Always ask